Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. All right, so today we're going to be painting Moonlit Dragonfly Pond, and I'm going to be sipping on a little Merlot. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. All right, so for the materials today, what we're going to be using is a stretched and primed 16 by 20 canvas. You can get this at any of your local craft stores or online, and of course you can switch up the size, but that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. The colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, burnt umber, which I'll refer to as brown, Mars black, green oxide, deep yellow, and fluorescent orange. And of course you can switch up those colors, but that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using 3 brushes today. This is a number 14 Filbert brush. I have a number 12 round brush, and then I have a number 2 round brush. And I might refer to them as small, medium, and large throughout the painting process. You're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes and a paper towel for drying your brushes. And I'm also going to be putting in the description below a downloadable image of the final painting, so you can print that and use it as your reference as you go along through this painting process. And there's also step-by-step written instructions as well. And that's all you're going to need. All right, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to use our large Filbert brush. I'm going to be painting the background, or the sky and the background of the water. The colors I'm going to be using are black, brown, blue, and white. And I'm going to start with all 4 colors on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to be using a left to right motion. And I want my sky to really look like a nice natural nighttime sky. So I want it pretty dark up at the top. I'm not going to go for a total black sky, but I definitely want it nice and a nice deep dark color. And as I go down the sky, I'm going to be using more brown and blue as opposed to black. The black can easily take over, and you really want to try and get this to be a natural looking sky. And if it's too black throughout the whole thing, you might lose a little bit of the depth throughout the sky. So as I come down, again, I'm picking up blue, brown, and white on my brush as I come down. It is going to get a little bit lighter as it comes down that sky, but I don't want it to get super light, so I am going to continually use those darker colors. And you can see, because I'm using the 3 colors on my brush at the same time, I'm getting a wonderful variety of colors throughout this sky. So just know that you could make it a solid color if you wanted to, but I really like to have these varying shades. It almost looks like maybe there's mist going by, or maybe a light fog at the bottom of the sky, or maybe light clouds going throughout the sky. So you can really have fun with this and make it as dark as you wanted to, or as light as you wanted to, but I'm going for a nice nighttime look to it. So I am definitely making mine on the darker side. And I am using a good amount of paint on my brush so I can have a nice continuous kind of flow going across. And just finished, getting ready to finish up here. And again, as I load my brush, I'm using brown, blue, and white. And every now and again, if I feel like I'm getting too light, you can add a touch of the black into your brush, just so that way, again, you've got a nice variety of shades going through. And I am using the brown quite a bit, and the reason for that, again, is so I have a nice natural look to it. I do like vibrant colors sometimes, and there's definitely a good place for them in certain paintings, but I know that later on in this painting, I'm going to want to utilize some really bright colors, and I'm going to want them to pop out and stand alone. So that's why I'm using this darker shading or darker tones for this under part of the painting. And then once you get this step all done, we are going to be using the medium brush for the next step. So once you get this all nice and done, you can put this large brush away in your water cup and take out your medium round brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the moon. I'm going to be using my number 12 brush, and I'm going to be doing it in the upper left-hand corner. The colors I'm going to be using are white, brown, and black. And my goal here is to get the bottom side of the moon brighter or whiter and the top side darker. And I know that the moon has craters and stuff, so it doesn't have to be a really smooth look to it. So I'm going to be taking my white paint to start, and I'm going to decide where I want my moon to go, and I'm going to make myself kind of a portion of a circle. And then I really want this outer edge to be the brightest, so I'm going to start with white out on this outer edge. And I don't need my edge to be a really clean line, so you can have it almost faded along the edges. And you can also use a touch of water. I just dipped my brush in water to give it like this, almost like a glow around the edges. I'm really faintly, I just want to show you what I'm doing with my water. I'm just touching my brush in my water a little bit. I dab it on my paper towel, and I'm just getting this really light, almost like a faded look, as if the moon is kind of casting a little bit of a glow onto the sky that it's next to. And then what I'm going to do is, as I move into the middle of the sky, or the moon, I'm going to start using these circular motions. So again, right now I just have white on my brush, and I'm using circular motions. This is going to help me to create the crater kind of look to it. And about, an inch or 2 inches as you get into it, now you can start picking up a touch of brown and a touch of black, and you're going to start working that into the bright white that you have on the edge. You want it to get nice and dark as you go towards the corner of the canvas. So I just picked up more black and brown. And I start here, but then I work my way back into the lighter area. This helps to create a nice kind of transition between the two. And if you need more white, just pick up more white. But right now my brush is getting a little dry, which is fine. I'm actually going to just touch it a touch in water because I know that underneath there is nice and dark. So that might help me to just get what I need without too much paint. And then I'm just going to kind of keep doing these little circles until I feel that I have a nice shape to the moon. I'm just kind of cleaning up the edge right now. And you can kind of keep working it. If you need more paint, add a little bit more paint on your brush. And you just kind of keep this up until you get the desired look that you're going for. And the goal, again, for me, was to have it really nice and bright on this bottom edge and darker up at the top. And the colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And I'm gonna just keep this up for a minute here. You can see I'm kind of putting my head back a little bit. This helps me to see how it looks from a distance. You might want to get up out of your seat and go stand across the room and see how it's looking from over there. That might help you to achieve the color that you want. And I'm just about done here. I'm going to just kind of work it for another minute here. And when you feel like you're all set, we are going to use this same brush for the next step, but you're going to want to wash it and dry it. And let's see here. Almost done. I just want this to be nice and dimensional, and having it lighter along this edge really helps to do that. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more white down here. I really want it nice and bright down in through here. And you can see I'm just kind of modifying it until it is exactly what I want it to be. It might take you a few minutes to develop it and get it to look nice and dimensional, but using this smaller brush as opposed to that big Filbert brush will definitely help you to control these colors. And again, if you have light spots and dark spots, that only enhances the look of it being more like a nice natural moon as opposed to just a big white blob in the middle of your canvas. And I'm kind of digging that. So let me just kind of get this top area a little bit more developed in through here. And you could add a little bit of blue in through there if you wanted to. The moon definitely sometimes will have a little bit of blue look to it. I think that's gonna do it. Well, maybe just a touch more. Do it for my moon. And then again, we're gonna use this same brush, so just wash it and dry it for the next step. All right, so I know when I was finishing up the last step, I said that I wanted you to use your medium brush, but I kind of lied. I didn't mean to. So really I want you to use your big brush for the next step so you can wash and dry your big Filbert brush. And I also want you to do something different here. We're gonna flip your canvas upside down because we're gonna paint the shadows underneath the water. So I'm flipping my canvas upside down. This is a really quick and easy way to work the bottom of your canvas and not miss any spots. The colors I'm going to be using are brown and black, and I'm not going to be using a lot, just a little bit of both colors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the top of the canvas like this. I want a little bit more paint here. And you can bring it down in various lengths. So once you've tapped it, now you just kind of start with a dry brush. You don't need a lot of paint here. You can bring this down in various lengths. I've got some long ones, some short ones. I know I'm going to want my grass longer over here on this side, so maybe these ones I've got coming even further. And that's all I'm going to do for that step. You don't have to overwork it, just kind of, you're really looking to achieve shadows underneath that water. So once you get done with this step, keep your canvas upside down and you're going to switch to the medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're making the grass underneath the water and the dark grass that's going to be above the water. So dark grass, I guess, is the best terminology for this step. The colors I'm going to be using are green, black, brown, and blue. And I want my pieces of grass to be really long on this side or the opposing side of the moon. And I want them to be shorter here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just alternate colors. And I am going to use a lot of paint on my brush. And my trick is that I do not hold my brush tight. I'm really just kind of loosely letting happen whatever wants to happen. Right now I've used some green and some brown. Now I'm just picking up some blue. And again, you can use these colors. I'm picking up some black in whatever order you want to. You want the pieces of grass to really kind of cross over one another. You can have, again, some really long ones if you want to, but I want to keep them shorter over by the moon. I want some nice long ones up here, maybe some black ones in through here. You can continue to switch or use multiple colors on your brush at the same time. You can have these pieces of grass kind of overlapping one another. They really are meant to add some nice dimension to the painting. When you see them intermingling with the bright grass and the dragonflies that we're going to be putting on later, you'll understand how important it is to have these dark pieces throughout the underpainting for this. And again, you can see I'm just kind of letting happen what's going to happen. I'm putting a ton of grass. The more grass you put, the more natural it's going to look. So don't feel, limited to the amount that you have to put. You can put, a million pieces if you want to. And again, I'm just kind of lightly pressing with a lot of paint, and that way it can really show on top of the dark background. And then when you feel like you have enough, which I think I want a couple more green pieces in through here. And again, you can have them, I'm almost going all the way up to what will in a minute be the top of my canvas, but right now it's the bottom of my canvas. And I want a lot. So that's why it's taken me a minute to do this step. I really want to have a nice full under grass painting in through here. And I'm using those 4 colors: brown, blue, green, and black. And then once you feel like you've got enough, then we're going to move on to the next step, and you're going to want to flip your painting back up in the correct direction and just get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the water. And as you probably have noticed, I put my canvas back up the correct way, so you should probably do that too. And I'm going to be using my number 12 round brush. The colors I'm going to be using are white, blue, brown, and green. And what I'm going to do is I want my water to be brightest on the left-hand side, and I'm going to almost create a diagonal bright area where the moon is kind of highlighting maybe the rippling pond water. I'm going to bring my water up maybe about a quarter or a third of the way up my canvas. I do want some of these pieces of grass to kind of be above the water. So I'm going to start with white paint on my brush, and I'm going to pick a spot over on the left-hand side, maybe about a third of the way up my canvas, and I'm going to mark it. And then I'm going to use my brush to measure how high up I put that water line. And I'm going to go over on the right-hand side, and I'm going to put another marker at the same spot. So that way I will have a semi-straight line going across. And I'm going to start with white paint on my brush. And you don't need a really clean line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wiggle my brush kind of left to right. I'm not pushing hard. And what's going to happen is it's going to end up looking like little ripples. If you feel that it's too dry looking, you can always add a touch of water to your brush or add more paint. And then I do want to go all the way across, but as I get towards that right-hand side, I'm going to be picking up more blue and green. And I'm still just using this left to right. I'm keeping my eye on the prize, which is that other marker. And now that I have kind of this top line, I am going to go back into white and make sure it's nice and bright over here on this left-hand side. And I'm going to make like a diagonal area of brightness. So again, really bright over here. And I'm just kind of wiggling my brush left to right, making this diagonal bright area. And then once I've accomplished that, then it's all about adding kind of faint or gentle ripples, which is where the blue, green, and brown are going to come into play. So if you have too much white on your brush, just wipe it on your paper towel because you do want a little bit. And you can pick up blue, brown, green in any order. You can pick them up together. You can pick them up separately, whatever works. And then you can touch your brush in your water if you want to. And then you're just making these faint little left to right marks throughout the rest of the water. I do make it a little bit more dramatic with more white up at the top. So that's where I'm going to kind of release the white that's on my brush. But as I'm going down into the depths of the water, I'm going to definitely use more brown, blue, and green. So it gets a little bit darker and more faint or more subtle as it comes down into the deep water, the deeper water. And then again, if you need to, you can add a touch of actual water onto your brush, and that's going to help to give you this really almost translucent look to it. And I'm not going to overwork it. I'm just going to kind of get it so it's nice and faint. I do really want to make sure that this top area is nice and bright. So if you feel it's not bright enough, go right back into that white and kind of make some additional highlights if you want to, because that's going to kind of be that magic spot on the painting where everybody's eyes are going to kind of be drawn to. And then once you get this step done, we're going to switch brushes to your small brush. So once you've got that highlight in that water, you've got little ripples, ever so gently kind of throughout the water, you can put that medium brush away in your water cup and take out the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is the first layer of the dragonfly body. I'm going to be using my small number 2 brush, and I'm going to be using black paint only. And a couple of tips, because you're going to want these lines to be skinny. So one of my tips is I take my brush and I spin it in my palette, so that allows my brush to be nice and pointy. And another trick is you can add a touch of water into your paint, and that makes it more of like an ink consistency. So I'm going to do the first body here, and what you're going to want to do is that you want it to be long and skinny. It's going to be a little bit thicker at the head and thinner at the tail. So what I like to do is I'm going to kind of push my brush kind of hard at the head, and then as I'm going towards the tail, I'm going to let up or let off on my pressure, and then it gets skinnier and skinnier as it goes towards the back end or the tail end of it. You can make them smaller. You can make them going in different directions. I'm going to do one here where I'm going to push, and then as it goes towards that tail end, I'm just going to make it nice and skinny. And this is where water in your paint, watering down your paint, is going to help out a little bit. I think I'm going to have one in the grass over here. So again, I'm going to push it kind of hard here, and then I let up or let off on my pressure, and it gets nice and slender at the end. You could practice this on, on a piece of paper or on, on another canvas somewhere, or even on a napkin or something, just so you can get the idea of how to do it. But you can have as many dragonflies as you want. I'm going to have 5, but you might want to have 15 or 2. I got one hiding in my reeds over here. This one's going to be a big one, I think. But again, have fun with it. Make as many as you want. And then we are going to use this small brush for the next step. So just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of the wings. I'm going to be using my number 2 small brush. I'm going to be using white paint, and I'm going to water down the paint a little bit. So I just am taking my brush and dipping it in water and just adding a couple of drops of water into my paint. So this way, again, it makes it nice and flowy, and if you get a little translucency to it, that works out well too. So here I go. I'm going to do my first one. These wings are going to be very near to the head of the dragonfly. They're very long and slender. And what I like to do is just kind of do one stroke and then thicken it up as much, or widen that wing as much as you want to. And then I'm going to do the second wing. And it can be in a very similar direction, but you want it pretty close to the first one. They could even touch if you wanted them to. And then I'm going to do my one over here. And they don't have to come off the body at the same exact angle. If you have them coming off at slightly different angles, what that's going to tell the viewer is that the dragonfly is in motion. So if they're all systematic and coming off exactly at the same angle, it might look like they're all almost pasted on there. I'm going to go on to this one now. So this one I'm going to have a little bit smaller. So I'm going to have my wings a little bit skinnier. And you want these wings to be pretty long. If you make them too short, you might end up looking like you have a bunch of little flies all over your canvas, which I'm fairly certain that's not what you want to go have your canvas looking like, a whole bunch of little flies. But making the wings nice and long, that will definitely tell the viewer that these are dragonflies and not houseflies. And I'm doing that one. And you want them to kind of be in similar length. You want them to, look like they belong to the same dragonfly. This one I want it to look like it's coming in for a landing or coming, almost diving into the water. So I'm going to have these wings kind of going in this direction. So they're almost going in a vertical direction like he's flying. I don't know if it's a he or a she, but I guess this one we'll call a he. Like it's flying into the pond. So I've got this one over here and maybe this one coming in here. And again, they don't have to come in at exactly the same angle. And then this one, I think I'm going to have this one almost like it's resting in the reeds. So I'm going to have maybe it's 4 wings. This one's got some long wings. 2. And if you feel like your paint is drying out, then just add a little bit more water to it. I know that's going to have 4 wings, so that's going to be my 4. And then I have one other one sitting, kind of hiding over here. So I'm going to do 1. And again, the wings don't have to come off exactly at the same angle. Maybe this one's going to be coming out this way. And then for the next step, we are going to use this small brush again. So just wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're doing for the next step is we're going to decorate the dragonflies. I'm going to use my small number 2 brush, and I will be using orange, yellow, green, blue, and white because I want them to be colorful, but I'm going to kind of pick a color theme for each one independently. So what I'm going to do is I'm always going to use white in my color combination. I'm going to do this first one here. I'm going to do it with white and orange. What I like to do is I'm going to polka dot the body first. So I have white and orange on my brush. I'm going to put 2 little eyes, and then I'm going to make polka dots all going down the body. And if you can make them smaller as they get towards the tail, great. That will add to a more realistic kind of illusion. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those same colors and I'm just going to lightly pull it into the wing, starting at the base towards the body. And if it gets too bright, like I think that's a little bit too orange for me, you can just dull it down with a little bit of white. And I like to keep these kind of a subtle tone. You might want yours really vibrant. It's totally up to you. I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just going into yellow and white for my next color combination. I'm going to do this one here, and I'm going to do them all the same way. So right now I'm going to do 2 little dots for the eyes, and then I'm just going to polka dot down that body. I can get my hand out of the way for you. And then I'm going to put a little bit of that color right in the wing. And again, I'm not really doing much to it because I really like the subtlety of that, of it blending with the white paint. I just washed and dried my brush because I want to do this one green. So I'm going to go green and white. So again, I have green and white on my brush. I'm doing my two little eyes. And you could do them all the same color pattern if you wanted to. If you wanted them all to be the orange, just make them all the orange. It's totally up to you. You might find that you really, maybe you like purple. So you got purple in your, you know, paint toolbox. So you can certainly make them whatever color you want. This is your painting. You have fun with it. And then I'm gonna do, for the next one, I'm gonna do blue on this one. So I'm just putting blue and white on my brush. And this one, because he's at the side, I'm not gonna put two eyes. I'm just putting one. And then I'm gonna just dot up that tail. And then I'm just gonna lightly put a little bit of blue in those wings. Just get a touch more white here. And you can have fun with that. And then I have one left over here. I think I'm gonna do that same blue-white combination for the one hiding in the, oh, maybe blue, white, orange. Let's get wild and crazy. So I have three colors on my brush, blue, white, and orange. I'm gonna do two little eyes. And then I'm just going to dot up the tail. I need a little more paint on my brush. And you can, I don't know if you can detect this, but I have a very unstable hand. It shakes a lot. So right now I have my complete hand resting on my canvas. So that's a great trick. If you have hands that shake a little bit, you can always just utilize your canvas, especially with acrylic paint because they dry so fast. You can really kind of just utilize the canvas itself to keep you stable. Even right now, I've got my pinky resting on the edge of the canvas. And that's gonna do it for that step. The next step, we're gonna be using our medium brush. So you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are adding the bright grass or the highlights to the grass. I am going to be using all of the colors on my palette except for blue, and I doubt I'm going to use black, but there might come a point where I want to use black. So I'm definitely going to be using white, orange, yellow, green, and brown. And my goal here is to have my grass that is facing the moon the brightest. So all of this grass in through here, as well as the left side of this grass, I want to be really bright. So I'm gonna just start with orange and yellow on my brush at the same time. And I'm really just going to start adding these beautiful bright highlights on some of the grass over on this side, but on the left-hand side. And you can see I'm extending it past where my original grass was. And then I'm going to just kind of continue to do that in through here. Now I'm adding a little bit of white to my brush. And if you bump into one of your dragonflies, don't worry, you can certainly go back and do a touch-up if you need to later. I would hate to have you avoid, I don't want it to look like there's no grass around your dragonfly. So definitely make sure that you put a bunch of grass around the dragonflies. And again, if you bump into one, don't worry about it. You can always add more, you know, go back and touch it up. I'm using green right now, and I really am just kind of continually switching the colors on my brush without washing. Right now I'm going to use a little bit of brown because I want a little bit of darker grass in through here, just at the base. And definitely some nice bright ones surrounding my, my dragonflies in through here, and have fun with this. You can sit and make these extra fluffy pieces coming off of these grass, like they're really being highlighted by the moon. I just love making these kind of little pieces coming off of a main piece of grass, because it gives it a lot of depth and dimension. And you can add more green and brown as you're coming over here, but you definitely want to have some pieces crossing over one another. You don't just want every piece of grass to look like it's standing straight up. That won't make it look natural. That'll make it look more like a nicely cut field of grass. So you want to make sure that you have pieces that look like they're bending. They've, you know, maybe some are broken, maybe some are going in, you know, in front of the dragonfly. That would kind of make it look like the dragonfly is almost flying into the grass. So, you know, just play with it. Make sure that you have it as full as you want it to be. I just kind of love to get lost in the grass and really make it look like it's overgrown. I mean, this is a pond. So if it's a nice spring pond, it's got all of this beautiful new life to it, and it's going to have, you know, maybe there's a bunch of frogs in the, you know, on the other side of the pond that have, you know, given a lot of life to this. Sorry, I'm working on that water a little bit more. Didn't mean to do that. My brush just gets away from me sometimes. I definitely really want this to have some nice bright spots in through here. Again, the goal is to have this grass the brightest on the side where the moon is. So that way it looks like it's being illuminated by the moon. Again, I'm not holding my brush too tight. I really just kind of want to have all these really fun brush strokes that are telling the viewer that there's lots of life here, and that there's, you know, the moon has been illuminating this little oasis in the middle of the woods somewhere. And again, if you bump into one of your dragonflies, don't worry, you can go back and you can add, you know, whatever touch-ups that you want later. Your pieces of grass can have some wiggle to them if you want, but definitely lots and lots of grass. That's going to make this really look like it's got tons of life in it. As you go over towards this right side, you can add more grass if you want to, but I would kind of stay away from using too much white over in this area on the far right. That way it'll look like, you know, it's got a lot of life, but it'll look like it's not being illuminated by the moon as much as that left side is. And again, that'll give it more of a natural kind of look to it. If you feel like you want to put a little in that water, feel free to do so. I'm just kind of having some fun here. I do know that with the dark background that we have, these colors will look a little bit darker when they dry. So don't be afraid if they look, you know, kind of too vibrant for you on the onset here, because they will get a little bit darker as they dry. And if you feel like, you know, after it dries that it's still too bright for you, you can always come back and add some more black pieces of grass, or like right now I've got brown on my brush, so I'm just kind of adding a little bit more brown towards the bottom of this section. So that way it looks like it's a little bit fuller at the bottom and maybe has a little bit more shadows as it's going down towards the bottom. You can add black to your brush if you need to, like I said. I want a couple of really fun pieces kind of coming off in a different direction here. And again, having them go in various directions is going to make it almost look like the piece of grass is coming and shooting out, and gravity always takes over with long pieces of grass at some point. So you definitely want to have some almost looking like they're falling over, because that's what they do. When it gets long and heavy, they're going to they're going to end up looking like they tip over at the ends. So I'm going to add a few more pieces here. I'm pretty digging it at this point. I like how these dragonflies, they're here, but they're not in your face too bold. I like to have kind of nature in its subtle ways. Just adding some more grass. I really like the grass part. And you can have fun. These are just some pieces kind of falling over. At some point I will stop. But until that point, I'm just going to keep adding grass. Some white, yellow, orange. And then once you feel like you have it as vibrant as you want, you can always step back, see if it's got the look that you are going for. And then we do have one final step, which is the final step of any good painting, and it's going to be with your tiny brush. So once you get as much grass on here as you want and your dragonflies are nice and beautiful, you can wash and dry. Oh gosh, here I go, this point where I have such a tough time stopping. We're going to go on with the small brush when you get all your grass on there. So just get ready for the next step. All right, so the next step is the last step, which is the last step to any good painting. You got to sign it. So I'm going to sign mine in the bottom left with my small brush and black paint. You could sign yours bottom left, bottom right, anywhere you want to. If you think that the black is too dark for this, you could certainly sign it in one of the lighter colors. But I like this signature to be nice and subtle on this one. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you love your painting, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.